An unexpected punky dumpling. This movie is rated insultingly low, and the entire Hobbit trilogy is insultingly rated low. When you look on the Rotten Tomatoes ratings, these movies get worse ratings than the Lord of the Rings, all the movies, which I'm totally fine with. I do think the Lord of the Rings books are better than the Hobbit book, and the movies are better than the Hobbit movies. However, it's a stretch to call these bad. These movies are only really considered bad because of their big bad brother who's way cooler than them. Nevertheless, today we're talking about what The Hobbit could have done better, what it did well, and reflecting on the now classics in the entire Hobbit trilogy. First of all, The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey and the series in general suffers from what I like to call wanting to be Lord of the Rings but also not trying to be Lord of the Rings. This movie wants to be separate and have separate characters in a different feel, but also wants to carry over some of the legend and the fandom from Lord of the Rings. They do this to avoid the accusation of saying, oh, you're not as good as the Lord of the Rings, and they say, yeah, we weren't trying to be, but they also have a very, very similar feel. So off the bat, we kind of have two different directions with the movie, and we're not totally sure what to do with either of them. This is the first and only Tolkien movie also to be like pretty much a musical.
Blunt the knives, bend the forks,
Smash the bottles and burn the corks.
the glasses and crack the plates. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates.
Which again, audiences didn't like because it wasn't very Lord of the Ringsy. But that's fine. This book is actually supposed to be for a younger audience. And the songs are fun and they're true to the book, and the dwarves are supposed to be kind of jolly fun figures with also a deep sorrowful past, like how they got kicked out of the Lonely Mountain.
Here's a here.
Next, Thorin is not Aragorn, and that's okay.
Gandalf. I thought you said this place would be easy to find. I lost my way twice.
This scene right here with Thorin's line gives us a tremendous amount of insight into his character. If you got lost twice on the way to finding something, it's probably your fault. And by the way, none of the other dwarves had a problem finding Bilbo's house. So this tells us a lot about Thorin right off the bat. He's a very, very prideful and stubborn individual, almost to a fault. But also, can you blame him? He has a tremendous amount of pride and he fights very hard for his people. Next, we did have a younger audience in The Unexpected Journey. It was funnier, it had the funny troll scenes, it had the song, but then it doesn't fit the rest of the series that it tried to fit into. By the time we got to the Battle of the Five Armies, we were looking at war scenes that were vastly more violent than even The Return of the King. So while The Hobbit was more of a children's book, it kind of betrays it to have these incredibly violent scenes. And once again, we have an unclear direction with our story. Are we trying to make a PG-13 movie or a PG fun one? We're going for two separate things at the same time, and you can only do two things for so long before two of them starts to suffer. I remember when I first watched this and I was kind of struggling to understand how Thorin did this so many years ago, and many years later is now recruiting Bilbo. It's kind of would have been helpful if they had added into this lore that Tolkien's dwarves live a very, very long time. They're not immortal like the elves, but relative to the men in the universe and relative to, us in real life, the dwarves live like a few hundred years, and it would have been helpful to know that Thorin in the time of the Hobbit is about 195 years old. Knowing this would add a lot of depth to Thorin's character and many of the other ages of the other dwarves, but it's not something that we ever get to hear, which kind of leaves a bit of confusion there. The constant and incessant Lord of the Rings foreshadowing is really exhausting throughout this movie and the entire trilogy. Gandalf takes counsel with a bunch of hippies in Rivendell to talk about Lord of the Rings stuff. The audience for The Hobbit was people who loved the Lord of the Rings and wanted to see a movie version of The Hobbit, which is also a great book. So if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you're coming to see The Hobbit, you know what happens in the Lord of the Rings, and the foreshadowing doesn't serve any purpose. It will be cool to show your kids many years from now so they can say, oh, look, this foreshadowing was there the whole time. But for the audience that it went after, it misses the plot. The existence of Radagast in The Hobbit is a little bit off and wasn't quite done perfectly. You see, Radagast is a very true Lord of the Rings character, and he was in the Lord of the Rings books, but not in the Lord of the Rings movie. He actually was not in the Hobbit book, but is in the Hobbit movie, so they switched it. Tolkien writes that of the 5 wizards, Gandalf was the only one who stayed true to his mission. Obviously, we know Sauron strayed, the two blue wizards we know next to nothing about, and Radagast we don't really know a whole lot about either, other than Gandalf was the only one who was true to his mission. So Radagast either would have ran away from the evil or joined Sauron. And Radagast in the movies is just really weird. He doesn't really have a good place in this, and the story could have gone on pretty easily without him. I don't see how anyone can hate on the troll scene. It's absolutely hilarious, and that's what it's supposed to be.
Ooh, that is beautifully balanced, that is.
Blimey! But what's come out of me hooter? It's got arms and legs and everything. Make him squeal!
Drop him!
You what?
I said, drop him.
If you read the scene in the book, you can't help from laughing either, and so they carried that magic over to the movie perfectly. This music also really kills. This was one of the last big movie scores that actually used melodies and iconic tunes. Nowadays in movies, we have incessant swelling instruments that become so unbelievably repetitive, and it doesn't serve anything to become iconic. You don't hear the opening track of Oppenheimer and think Oppenheimer, but when you hear the Hobbit music, the Lord of the Rings music, you think of the Lord of the Rings. Also, I find it really awesome when the dwarves arrive in Rivendell.
Try it. Just a mouthful.
I don't like green food.
And they trash talk the elves because elves are annoying brats, and we all know people like that in life. Who are so nice, they have no acne, they're good at kung fu, and they could use a humbling now and again, and I really appreciate this. It's beautiful. And this quote is just lovely.
Saruman believes that it is only a great power that can hold evil in check. But that is not what I have found. I found it is the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keeps the darkness at bay. Simple acts of kindness and love.
I don't think this quote is from Tolkien, but I'll give it to the directors. This is pretty good. Having an entirely CGI orc and goblin cast is a little cringe, but I still don't see how you can say that this escape from the goblin caves is not really cool. Let us not forget, Riddles in the Dark is probably the best scene in all three of the Hobbit movies.
Blesses and splashes, precious. That's a meaty mouthful. What is it, precious? What is it? Oh, we like goblins as bats and fishes, but we hasn't tried hobbits before. Is it soft? Is it juicy?
Now, keep your distance. I'll use this if I have to.
So, why don't we have a game of riddles? Yes, just you and me.
Yes. Just us.
Yes. And if I win, you show me the way out. Yes.
Yes. And if it loses, what then? Well, if it loses, precious, then we eat it. If Baggins loses, we eat it whole.
Fair enough.
Andy Serkis kills it. We wanted to see him return one last time after The Lord of the Rings, and it was actually really awesome. One of the things The Lord of the Rings struggled with is that the CGI on Gollum isn't that great. And so when we go to The Hobbit, a character that was already fully CGI, it's nice to see a fully CGI character actually get a facelift, as opposed to the orcs who were actors. But Gollum was always CGI, and he got a big improvement in his visual appearance. We learned an awesome lesson about the virtuousness of courage and its application. This whole scene is surprisingly faithful to a book. There's no annoying Lord of the Rings foreshadowing because this was naturally part of the story. It helps progress our story with Bilbo and the dwarves, and also foreshadows the Lord of the Rings, instead of foreshadowing the Lord of the Rings for the sake of foreshadowing the Lord of the Rings. Biblo's awesome quote, "Why did you come back?"
Why did you come back?
Look, I know you doubt me. I know you always have. And you're right, I often think of Bag End. I miss my books. And my armchair, my garden. See, that's where I belong. That's home. And that's why I came back, because you don't have one. A home.
Out of the frying pan and into the fire, that's actually the name of one of the chapters in the book. Very nicely done. But this is just cringe looking at Azog. He looks like a cut up marshmallow. This CGI on Azog looks really bad. This end battle scene isn't too bad, but since they divided The Hobbit into 3 movies, even though it was one book, they had to write 3 climaxes for each book. And this is why this one isn't so great. And actually none of the climaxes are all that great, because the climax of the Hobbit book is when they kill the dragon, but they use that as the opening part of the Battle of the 5 Armies. So each movie has a different climax none of the three were the climax of the actual Hobbit. Another thought on the eagles, because I know you movie purists are asking about it. The eagles are servants of Manwë. Manwë is one of the Valar, one of the highest beings in the world, aside from the high god of the Lord of the Rings universe, which is Eru-Ilúvatar. Eru-Ilúvatar created, I think, like 13 or something Valar. One of them is Morgoth, and Morgoth is the boss of Sauron, and Sauron and Gandalf are the same species of beings. And the eagles are servants of Manwë, one of the Valar. So the eagles can't just be summoned by Gandalf. Gandalf doesn't have that power. When you see the eagles, it means Manwë sends his love. Plus, Tolkien answers this question himself.
And he asked me in the letter why they didn't just fly the eagles into Mordor. And I told him I get this same question. The people run into me at the pub and ask why didn't they just fly the eagles to Mordor? It would have made the quest a whole lot easier. And I told him the same thing that I'm telling you right now. Shut up.
Did I not say that you would be a burden? That you would not survive in the wild? That you had no place amongst us? I have never been so wrong in all my life.
And we end An Unexpected Journey with a lovely lesson about love winning over pride. A virtuous lesson and a hard one to learn as a dwarf. A dwarf being what a lot of us are in life, these stubborn, stuck-up people who have a hard time seeing beyond our own desire. So The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, it's an underrated gem. I would recommend it to anyone. No, it's not Lord of the Rings. No, it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. No, it's not as good as the Hobbit book, but it's really good. Something cannot be as good as Lord of the Rings and still be good. So I highly recommend An Unexpected Journey, and be gone.